Smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort of
night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
That was Aaron Rodgers' thing. To your quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
It's a luxury pick. We don't have the luxury. We're trying to win right now. I'm in a window right now, and you're going to say, no, we're going to plan this for the future. With a guy who had 4 years, 4 seasons ended by injury. 4. Like, Michael Penix is a walking injury. Like, what are you doing taking him in the top 10?
The Bostonian versus the Book.
And now you have to qualify in these majors. You got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness. And I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. Mm-hmm. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now. And you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
And welcome in a very happy Monday now, February the 3rd, 2025. It is Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri, and certainly appreciate you stopping by as T-minus 6 days and counting, of course, until the big game in New Orleans. And the SportsGrid Network will be live on location at Radio Row in New Orleans all week long, bringing you the latest information from the ground there, as it's exciting. Already, from what I understand, Kansas City Chiefs fans as well as Philadelphia Eagle fans are descending upon New Orleans for what should be a very, at least we hope, a very entertaining game come Sunday, as the market still has this thing priced at, well, close to a pick-em here, as the Chiefs still listed as a 1.5-point favorite. We have seen the total drop a little bit, right around the 48.5, 49 mark. It was as high as 49.5, and I would anticipate that this total will go up before it eventually comes back down before kickoff. As we all know, each and every year during the big game, the public usually gets the bets in right around Saturday and, of course, on Sunday, and it's almost always to the over. So whether or not that will push the game up high enough to get big money bets to come back in on the under remains to be seen. But boy, oh boy, do we've got a whole lot of coverage from New Orleans coming your way this week. We'll talk a lot about the prop bets as well coming up over the next hour and 50 minutes or so. But while we await the final NFL game of the 24-25 season, we still got a lot going on the hardwood, including college basketball night here on a limited slate, 21 total games on tap, a lot from leagues like the Patriot or the Southland or the SWAC and the MEAC. So not a whole lot of well-known household names on the court tonight in college basketball. But there is one game on tap that we've all heard about and all are looking forward to tonight in college basketball, and that is going to be the Big 12 powerhouses. Iowa State and Kansas are going to be the headliners here tonight, as both of these teams coming in on losing streaks. And Iowa State has lost the last two games, the last one at home. Something that we thought was not even close to being possible just a few short weeks ago. But my goodness, Iowa State is a shell of what we saw earlier on in this season right now, as they lost to lowly Kansas State at home on Saturday. But nothing, and I mean nothing, may be more embarrassing and red flag waving than how Kansas lost on the road to the Baylor Bears on Saturday, losing a 21-point lead in the game. It is the biggest blown win by Kansas in their basketball history. And we're going back a little while here with Kansas Jayhawks basketball. But under Bill Self alone, they have never lost a game in which they were ahead by that many in the history of the program. And they, to a shorthanded Baylor team, which was quite unthinkable just a couple of weeks ago. Now Kansas back at home, Iowa State on the road, and both of these teams are reeling and both need a win in the biggest way to try to get back on track. We see this total hovering today. It did drop a little bit, 146 and a half. And that makes sense given the fact that both of these two teams are top 20 in defensive efficiency. Both of these teams pride themselves very much on defense. And for Kansas this year, they've played a lot of games to the under, especially at home. The problem is that their shooting is extremely erratic, and for some reason, Bill Self is still shuffling the lineups and bringing in different guys. It's very strange to be, here we are kicking off February, and Bill Self, the head coach of Kansas, is still bringing out different starting rotations. So we'll see how this game here goes tonight. I personally think the under is not a bad look, but for Iowa State, you got to stop the bleeding. This was a team that we all thought a few short weeks ago could be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, and yet they have looked anything but a top 5 team. That loss over the weekend to Kansas State was probably the worst loss of any top 5 team that we have seen in a very long time. But that is going to be your featured matchup tonight in college basketball. Meanwhile, in the NBA, we got a absolutely loaded slate here tonight, as 10 games on tap, getting ready to kick off, coming up at the top of the hour. And boy, the NBA has thanked the NFL for taking a week off, and they made the most of a slow news cycle over the weekend by dominating the headlines. And it all started, of course, Saturday night into Sunday, as we learned maybe the biggest, the biggest, I don't even think it is, but it is the biggest and most unbelievable trade we have seen in the history of the NBA. And that, too, is saying something, as Luka Doncic is now a Los Angeles Laker, while the unibrow AD Anthony Davis is on his way to Dallas in what many people are still scratching their head over, going, how in the world could this possibly be? Well, it is, and get used to it, because from what I understand, we're probably much closer to getting Luka back on the court than AD with his abdominal strain. Either way, the future markets have been extremely busy over the last couple of days since those announcements, as we have seen a lot of money come pouring in on the Lakers now to not only win the West, but maybe with LeBron James and Luka Doncic, and maybe a very mad Luka Doncic, as we've got Luka in a Lakers uniform. Look at that. Coming out of the West, where obviously the Oklahoma City Thunder are still your favorites, but the Lakers at plus 850 is a little dramatic, don't we think here? Just a little bit. I don't think any of this makes any sense. I don't think the Lakers with Luka and with no big and LeBron James, I just don't believe that that's going to be a winning combination for the remainder of this year. Anything can happen, but I doubt it very much here. They still need to make something else happen by Thursday before I'd even consider placing a bet on the Lakers in any future market. And meanwhile, the Celtics are still laughing, going, you guys trade away, do what you got to do, because, yeah, we're the champs, and we're still the favorites, certainly in the East. So we'll dive into all of these games here tonight. Very tough, and I'll caution folks, be very careful during the trade deadline week in the NBA, diving into a lot of plays, because a lot of different motivation happening in the NBA right now, a lot of uncertainty with a lot of teams. That makes for some crazy outcomes, but we'll talk much more about it as Game Time Decisions continues here on the Grid.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on this Monday as the week of the big game, 6 days and counting, before we get that final NFL game of the year, crown a champion between the Kansas City Chiefs, the current back-to-back champs, taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, who did have their first crack at them a couple of years ago in the big game, but couldn't break through. And once again, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid and company Did it to, like they've done to a lot of teams. They just couldn't put them away, and it came back to bite them, but they will have another crack at it come Sunday. We'll have, obviously, much more on this throughout the week in the big game. But we do have a huge NBA slate tonight. 10 games on tap, getting ready at the top of the hour with the Detroit Pistons taking on the Atlanta Hawks. Our good friend Tom Vecchio stepping in, taking a look at this card here tonight. And it's always interesting, the trade deadline week in the NBA, because you do have a lot of teams that, let's face it, they're playing for next year. Not a whole lot at stake here this year, but you do have a lot of teams. I mean, and call me crazy, Tom, but players got to be looking at that Doncic news and AD and be like, are any of us safe here this week? Like, am I picking my family up and moving? Like, what in the world is going on? We're hearing now that Anthony or Kevin Durant is on the market, that the Suns are shopping him around. So maybe the craziness is not done just yet, but the Atlanta Hawks are probably safely in the dumpster anyway, and they take on the Detroit Pistons, who have been playing some pretty decent basketball. How do we approach this game tonight? Second of a back-to-back for the Pistons.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on, as you said, not only with this game, but for the week overall. And you kind of touched on it right at the end of the last segment. So, trade deadline week, I would say, again, like you said, you don't want to have too many plays out there. Like, teams have varying degrees of motivation. Players could be getting pulled. So you could either have the line move against you pretty dramatically, like you think a team's going to play, and all of a sudden they trade their star player, that line moves, dramatically. But when it comes to player props, I do think there is somewhat of an advantage to take in certain circumstances. If there's a rumor out there that a player is going to be traded or something, obviously the books know that, but you can jump on at least some lines early for some players. Then if that player is, sitting for rest reasons, they're not going to risk his injury, those lines will jump up on the players that are left for, their points prop or whatever it might be. So you can jump in on things early, but obviously we have to do that in a cautious way. But specifically for the Pistons and the Hawks tonight, I talked about this morning. This is obviously, no spoiler for you because you saw these already, but let's turn to Cade Cunningham. Obviously, you and I both big fans of him. He has been downright awesome this year. It's a great story for the Pistons compared to where they were in the past 2 years. So Cade Cunningham for top score at plus 105. It's not specifically about his points prop, which is sitting at 27.5. You could certainly play the over on that, but that is the highest on the game, 27.5. So in theory, if you think he hits the over on that, it's a good scenario that he also is the top point scorer. So why don't we shoot for just a little bit of plus money at plus 105 instead of laying minus 106 when we already think he's going to hit over 27.5 points?
Yeah, and the Hawks are just, my goodness. No Jalen Johnson, no Bogdanovich now, Clint Capella out. Obviously, it looks like you're going to have, you're going to have the main possible scorer there for Atlanta. But what does that mean even? Where are the points coming from in this game from Atlanta? Though I will say the kid, the Zachariah Richache, he's actually had some opportunities to play, and he's actually done a pretty good job. He dropped 30 against the Cavs, 17 against the Pacers. So maybe maybe they've switched over to that youth movement there, but it also feels like a huge number at 235 and a half. I'm just not sure where the points are going to come from for Atlanta. I would lean Detroit, but I'd probably lean the under in this just as well, no?
I think the under's fine. As you said with Richache, like, what do we see from him moving forward? And, part of me wants to buy into him and a little bit Dyson Daniels. Like, at what point does Trae Young, take a step back in the offense, right? We know what we have with Trae Young. It's like, again, if they're playing for next year, Jalen Johnson's done for the year. So, Daniels and Richache should see just so many minutes moving forward. So once things get settled after the trade deadline, assuming they don't move any other players, we could be looking at pretty consistent PRA bets for some of these players, night in and night out. Wouldn't be surprised to see Trae Young take an extra night off here or there. And the volume of minutes will be in the upper 30s for these players. So, buying in essentially on Richache at 11.5 points, that's what it is tonight. Again, leaning on the under essentially. But that's a number that could be up to 14.5, 15.5 before the end of the month. And all of a sudden, you've kind of lost your step on getting some value against the books.
Yeah, we got a couple of other interesting games tonight. 7:30, you got that Rockets Knicks game at the Garden. Anunoby is out. I believe Hart is good to go. But Jabari Smith still out for Houston. I don't see a whole lot else for Houston. I know we had some question marks. Maybe Van Fleet not playing in this one here. Albert Sengun has been MIA the last couple of games, and they haven't won them. He is a huge part of what they're doing. But the money keeps coming in on the Knicks. 6.5 is what we're seeing. What are you thinking?
So we did see recently Alperen Sengun, he got ruled out tonight, which obviously isn't great for their team overall. As I said this morning, I still like the under on Karl-Anthony Towns on rebounds, under 13.5. I think it's just a little bit too much. I expect the Knicks to bounce back, right? And Cat to bounce back specifically after, let's just call it what it is, a dud game he put out there versus the Lakers on Saturday night. Like, just a terrible game for him. I expect him to bounce back, but at a certain point, 14 rebounds from him is doable, but the line is just not right. And I know it's a little bit juiced on the under at minus 136 for under 13.5, but I think that's the right spot to go, expecting Cat to have his normal 30-10, 30-12 kind of game. But if we're not going to see scoring from the Rockets, if some of their key players are out, we could see this as a blowout factor from the Knicks, which they are known to do this year, and that will limit the minutes for Cat come the fourth quarter.
What do we do with the Bucks taking on the Thunder? But I mean, Bucks have lost 4 of their last 5, right? They played last night. They got blown out in the fourth by the Grizzlies. And by the way, the Thunder have lost 2 of their last 4 too, but they did have the night off after they beat Sacramento by 30 plus. That was an embarrassing game as well. I do think there's a couple of opportunities in the prop market. We'll see what Tom thinks about this game and a couple of others as Game Time Decisions continues here on the Grid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word. Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on this Monday. I'm Joe Raineri, joined again by Tom Vecchio here as we're taking a look at this Big Ten game slate in the association tonight. We were talking about the Milwaukee Bucks, who are in a tailspin right now, and I just couldn't get over how old and slow they looked in that fourth quarter last night against the Memphis Grizzlies, who just basically ran them off the court there in Milwaukee. Now they're on the road, taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder, and literally nobody seems to be playing. No Lillard, no Giannis, no Bobby Porter. It's just, Middleton and whoever's left on the team. This line is ballooned up to 16.5, and you and I were just talking, maybe a team total is the way to look at this one.
It has to be. And, I'm not seeing any Bucks player props posted as of now. It's just all Thunder. But you said the total has dropped, and it's got to be Bucks team total under 104.5. It is minus 128. Over's at plus 104. But, man, where will the points be coming from when it comes to the Bucks? And, as we were talking in the break, the Thunder, they've been good lately. They haven't been amazing. This is a spot for them just to kind of right the ship at home, pick up a win, get things going, before the trade deadline, whatever it might be. This is a chance for them. I want to say they can cover the 16. Obviously, it's a huge number, but they just got to bring it to the Bucks. That means locking things down on defense. SGA doing his normal thing, getting contributions from everyone on the court. But the Bucks' lack of scoring, I think, will be front and center for tonight's game. I don't want to say it's going to be what we saw last night with the Mavericks, because that was terrible, but maybe something similar.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And we were trying to figure out what is going on with the San Antonio Memphis line, except this thing is dropped now down to 3.5. I know Desmond Bane ruled out at this point. They were still thinking maybe that they'd have an opportunity for John Morant to come back, but I still not seeing one way or the other for him. And for the most part, they don't have De'Aaron Fox yet, but they will, San Antonio. But you got to figure they got to be excited about the future and what's going on here. Tough spot for Memphis, being in, Milwaukee last night, now home, having to take on Wembanyama here. I get the line moving towards San Antonio.
Oh, I absolutely get it. We got to assume that Chris Paul is going to lose the starting job at point guard.
Yep.
So maybe Chris Paul wants to go out there and at least have a good game one more time before he's kicked out of the starting lineup or whatever it might be. His line's only 9.5. Obviously, it's what it should be for this point in his career. We know what he's been doing in the offense overall. He's not that dominant scorer that he has to be. But it's going to be interesting to see where De'Aaron Fox's line pops up in that first game when he's with the Spurs, because there's the mentality of hey, do we want to have him take 25 shots just so he can be the focal point of the offense? We can kind of get things acclimated. Everyone, kind of finds their role, or is he just going to fill the role that CP3 was playing? It's not going to be him scoring 9 points or 8 points, but he's not going to be scoring the 25, 26 where he was with Sacramento. It's going to fall somewhere in between. So the Fox props right when he joins the Spurs, I think those will be fluctuating in this first few games pretty dramatically.
Yeah, now we got a couple of games going on late, which I think are interesting here. We mentioned that Phoenix, there are rumors that Durant is being shopped around, and yet here we go with a Portland Trailblazers team, young, starting to come together. They've won 3 games in a row, and not just one, blowing people out by 19, 29, 13 points. They just beat Phoenix, right? As a 5-point underdog Saturday. Now they're in Phoenix. What are we looking at here? Or now they're in Portland, rather. What are we thinking about?
How do we not like Portland in this spot? Like you said, it's not just 3 in a row. They've actually won 7 of their last 10. And a team that has something to prove, that maybe wants to play a little bit of a spoiler role. So I don't mind Trailblazers +5. And I don't mind the under either, because just the internal turmoil that the Suns are going to have, they've constantly gone through, just not performing the expectations. What are we getting from Booker? We know we can get from him. Durant's now potentially to be traded. They're moving Beal to the bench, obviously, that happened weeks ago. Nurkic, the same thing. There's just so much turmoil in the Suns that, what kind of effort are they going to bring on a night-to-night basis leading up to the trade deadline in a couple days? And after that, it may not look good for them if they do trade Durant, and then the team's just in complete collapse mode at that point. So the Trailblazers are hot right now.
Yep, they are. Not so much for Orlando tonight in Golden State. Feels like an under. Draymond is going for Golden State tonight. We can't trust Orlando to score enough, can we?
No. I mean, this is 209 total is insanely low, but the Magic were a good story to start the season. Obviously, Paolo Banchero started off super hot. That has fallen away. It's all about the Warriors tonight.
All about the Warriors, all about Tom Vecchio as well. We appreciate it, brother. We'll talk to you tomorrow as Game Time Decisions continues on the
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes, end of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Gotcha. And what are we doing with Joe? Oh, there's only one NHL game. All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we are getting ready for the big game. Of course, T-minus 6 days and counting. Can't believe it. One more NFL game for the season, getting ready to take center stage in New Orleans. Not a whole lot going on in the marketplace as far as the game side and total goes, but as you can imagine, props are moving quick, and there are certainly a number of props that correlate to how you think this game is going to roll. And you got to be careful when you have over, 300, 400 different props that you can look at. You want to be careful because you can get carried away. And next thing you know, you're betting props and you're betting against the side and the total that you had already bet without realizing it. So you got to be cautious when you're diving into these. Have some fun with it. Pick a couple of props that you think correlate to who is going to win, or how many points you think are going to be scored in this game, and I think you'll be good to go. But ultimately, we're still waiting to hear a couple of injury news, and really, I think the injuries of most concern are going to be on the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line now. They're in New Orleans with the Chiefs, and of course, as the week progresses, the SportsGrid Network, we're live on location at Radio Row, so we've got boots on the ground there. We'll keep you posted with everything you need to know. Dr. David Chow will be there. We're going to speak to him, but we had a chance to speak with him earlier today on the early line, and really that was the biggest question mark, was what's going to happen with the offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles, and will they have their starting center good to go? At this point, nobody is 100% in the NFL when you get to this point in the season. But Are they 70%, 60%? Are we going to be shuffling the offensive line for the biggest game of the year? That's the big question here, but we'll have more information, obviously, as the week progresses here. And as we get the info, we'll pass that along to you. But not a whole lot in the price right now in the market. And of course, if you're looking for some of the more exotic props, things like the MVP, which has always been, well, for the most part, has been a quarterback award. You've got Patrick Mahomes up at the top of the board there as your favorite, but there he is. Saquon Barkley, almost a 3-1 opportunity to back him in the MVP race. And listen, I think there's an argument can be made that if the Philadelphia Eagles win this, then there's probably, a more likelihood and more ways for the Eagles to win this game with Saquon Barkley being the MVP than maybe the Eagles winning this game and Jalen Hurts the MVP. You never know. Could a defensive player for the Philadelphia Eagles actually be into consideration, given the fact that you've got to beat the back-to-back champion MVP in Patrick Mahomes? Could the defense step up and make life miserable for Patrick Mahomes? The stat that sticks out to me of all of the trends that we have heard heading into this game, the one stat that sticks out to me still, and I love Vic Fangio. I think he's got together one of the best defenses the Eagles have seen in a long time. Certainly a much better defense than the one they showed up with a couple of Super Bowls ago and ended up losing to Patrick Mahomes and company. This is by far the best defense, and it had been the best defense since about week 5 on in the NFL this year, and that's Vic Fangio for you. But the problem is Fangio has coached defenses with the Denver Broncos and the Miami Dolphins, and he has faced Patrick Mahomes 8 times. You know how many times he's made life miserable for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs offense? The answer is 0. Vic Fangio defenses have never won a game against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So will the extra time and that experience, listen, you can't win them all, right? So maybe this is finally the 9th time is a charm for Vic Fangio and the defense. Can the defense win this game for Philadelphia? I don't think there's any question that the running game and the Eagles defense is who I would be targeting if I'm backing Philadelphia to win this game. I think you can look at a lot of props that center around that and say, hey, the Kansas City Chiefs going on, I believe, 18 straight games, Steve Spagnuolo and this Kansas City Chiefs defense, they have not given up a 100-yard rushing game. 18 straight. Will it be 19? Because if it is 19, the Kansas City Chiefs in all likelihood win this game. So it all depends on the blueprint and how you think this goes on. Is there a scenario in which we can get 125-yard effort from Saquon Barkley and the Eagles still lose? Certainly. There is absolutely. Is there as many paths for that to happen in a losing effort? I don't think so, because I think the way you're going to have to beat Patrick Mahomes is you got to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline when it matters the most. And the problem with teams, just ask Buffalo, is that they couldn't gain enough separation and could not, when it mattered the most, keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, and then to the point where he couldn't come in the final 2 minutes with a one-score game and beat you. His numbers in those efforts, especially in the playoffs, are just epic. They are historic on this guy and you being able to finish him. You can't give the ball back to Kansas City. You have to do everything in your power to make sure that Patrick Mahomes can't come back, doesn't have enough time, doesn't have, it's a 2-score game. You got to do everything you can to make sure that you don't give Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid an opportunity to win the game in the final couple of minutes. We have yet to see a team do it for quite a while, but hey, we'll see if Vic Fangio and Philadelphia can, but I think it's going to be all about Saquon and that defense. And if you like Philadelphia, and I can make the argument that Philadelphia should be the favorite, the wrong team is favorited here. The numbers absolutely point to it, that on a neutral site game, these two teams, and now granted it is the playoffs and there's a coaching edge and it's experience, and I get all that, but on paper and from what we've seen from these two teams, you know, the Eagles by far, to me, are very worthy of being a 1.5 point favorite here, not the Kansas City Chiefs. So would it shock me if the Eagles won? Absolutely not. Will I be betting the Eagles to win the Super Bowl? Well, I'm going to use the Eagles in a teaser situation. I'm going to get them up and over a touchdown. I do think, in all likelihood, it's going to be a one-score game. And if that's the case, if I can use a 6-point teaser on the side and get Philadelphia up over a touchdown, 7.5, maybe 8 if it gets to 2, which I doubt. But right now, I can tease them up to 7.5. And I can tease the total down. I can tease the total, get it up to 54.5, 55. And guess what? I'm good with that bet. I'm good with the Eagles getting over a touchdown. And I do believe it's the running game and the defense that will win it for them anyway. And I don't see how we're getting 54.5 points over that in this matchup with these two defenses. So a lot of props can be correlated with how you think this outcome is going to show up, but it's all about Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and can Philadelphia finally get it done and beat them and knock them down? Boy, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking so forward to this game on Sunday. We'll be back with Joe Madden next year on GameTime Decisions.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network as we get ready for a big night On the hardwood here, light slate of games in college basketball, big slate of games in the NBA. Just one game, though, set to puck to drop here in the NHL, because once again, the NHL scheduling is just amazing. And no rhyme or reason to any of it, as they backload a million games on a Sunday, and then they give us one on a Monday, Joe, without a whole lot of competition. But we got Otto and we got Nashville, and we've got Joe Madden to help us decide which way we should be looking at this one, as Ottawa's playing some pretty good hockey as of late. And Nashville, while they still are one of the most disappointing teams, I think, this season, Joe. So what gives in this game tonight?
Yeah, they really are. You look at the Nashville Predators, and out there on the road, they've really struggled. They've been a little bit better here at home, and Saros getting the start tonight has been stronger in net, but offensively then they haven't been picking it up. So it seems like this team can't win. Either the offense is on, the defense is off, and the goaltending is off, or vice versa. So looking at them versus a hot Ottawa Senators team, it is hard to step in front of the Sens. We were thinking we were going to get Ullmark tonight. Now, Ullmark has been brought back up from the long-term injury reserve, and he should be on the ice, I'm thinking, tomorrow versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, since we're now getting Forsberg confirmed here in net for the Ottawa Senators. I was really hoping it would be Ullmark tonight, because I do think whichever team gets him first, probably the Tampa Bay Lightning tomorrow, because this is the first night of a back-to-back here for the Sens, will be able to hit him and hit him hard. Now, with Forsberg coming in, I still do think the Nashville Predators should be able to put some goals on the board, Joe. So I played around with this one a little bit, because the Nashville Predators were such a big favorite on that money line in this game. I don't want to lay even a minus 130 for the Preds, even though it's not really that much juice at the end of the day. But it's the Predators, and we know their struggle. So I looked at a couple of things. I think they can hit Forsberg pretty early in this game. We know if the Predators have had success in games, they've got up early in these games, and then they've just completely blown these leads. So when you look at the Nashville Predators in the first period, you can lay the half a goal on that puck line. That's coming in right around between plus 165 to plus 180, depending on your book. So shop those lines. I do think the Ottawa Senators can get some goals in this game today on Saros as well. And I expect this one to go over that total. We know the last time these guys met back in December, it was a low scoring 3-1 game. We know the Ottawa Senators really trend to that under, but I think the Preds will push them into a game that's a higher scoring one than we're expecting. So I would look at the over here. The Predators, they're going to be desperate. They've lost their last four, both these teams trending in the opposite direction. And like I said, with the Senators, the Lightning tomorrow, but also the Lightning on Thursday, and then the Florida Panthers on deck on Saturday. So you look at their opponents ahead of them. This is just a game they have to get through. They're going to be trying to get the win, of course, but 3 hard games on deck, Joe.
3 very hard games on deck, but Nashville is just completely inept offensively during this 4-game slide. I think, what do they got? 6 total goals. They just got shut out by Pittsburgh here. Stamkos can't even get a point. You just go down the list with some of these guys, and you're like, wait, what? What are you talking to? Like, they are, and even he said it after the game. He's like, we're in a funk. We just can't seem to figure it out. And when that happens, usually it's like, well, are we expecting a bounce back tonight against this Ottawa team, or should we be looking maybe less goals for Nashville again tonight?
You know what? I think they can go over, and the book's really thinking so too for their team total. It's 2.5, Joe, and that 2.5 is so highly juiced at like minus 174 to minus 180. So the books are expecting at least 3 goals out of them, which is absolutely crazy when the line was juiced earlier this morning to the under 5.5. So I really do think the Preds are the right side of this game. The line's just really telling us so, and there's a couple of players that we can circle and looking at line mates for their points tonight to bring that juice down, doing a point parlay for them. So looking at Forsberg here, Forsberg has 49 points on the season, so point number 50 tonight. Now, if you parlay Forsberg and Stamkos both for a point, Stamkos actually has 5 goals and 2 assists in the last 10 games, so while it doesn't seem like he's doing much, he's still been able to do something out on the ice. He's starting to trend better. Putting Forsberg and Stamkos for a point together on that top lines coming in at plus 107. But then if you also look at the second line, you can look at Ryan O'Reilly. He has a 296 goals in his career. So 14 goals and 15 assists this season. He's 1 point away from 30 points, so I'll take him for the point tonight. But you guys watch for him, 4 goals away from goal number 300. So that's definitely on his mind. I will take Ryan O'Reilly for the point, and then I'm going to put it with Jonathan Marchessault on the same second line with him. Both of those guys for a point tonight at plus 161, Joe. So lots of value there.
A lot of value there. Been 7 years since Ottawa's made the postseason, Joe. You believe in can they maintain and get it done this year? Can they actually break that drought?
You know what? If Allmark comes back and Allmark really stands tall between the pipes, I do think they have the ability, because you look at how this team has been able to play in such lower scoring games, but offensively, you're seeing those weapons really step up. You've got so much talent there with Brady Tkachuk, Tim Struzal, and then Josh Norris. Josh Norris, as of late, he's been racking up the points, 4 goals and 3 assists in the last 10. Tim Struzal, 17 goals and 35 assists on the season. And then Brady Tkachuk, of course, any given night, he can light that lamp. So I do think the Ottawa Senators have the ability. Sitting third in the Atlantic right now, they're holding on to a playoff spot. They need to get every win that they can. And I really do think their heads could be in the game tomorrow versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, because we know how hard that matchup is going to be. And I think that's why we're not seeing Allmark tonight. But I think it was the wrong decision, Joe. I would start Allmark tonight. He has missed 18 games. You've got to think he's got to come out a little rough. That was a back injury that he went out for. I guess he's ready, but I would have started him against a weaker team here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, looking at some of what we have seen thus far here in the NHL, there are some disappointing teams, but there are some opportunities, I think, for some teams still to turn it around, Joe. I want to get your thoughts on maybe some of these games coming up and some of these teams, including your Calgary Flames, who we're probably sticking a fork in. But we'll talk about it when Game Time Decisions continues.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word. Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network as we look to wrap up this first hour together. Joe Madden here with us. And Joe, before I get you out of here, it's funny, we're getting to that point, right? We're about 51 games, 52 games into the season here on the ice, and obviously some trends are beginning to emerge. And now would be a good time to start taking a look at some of these matchups when we get them. I mean, tomorrow's slate is great. And I don't think you have to look any further than Florida taking on Washington. And I don't know if people realize, I mean, look at that. You got a pick'em price. Washington is 34-11. Like, do people realize that this is, Washington has really turned some things around here this season? Are we taking them seriously as a contender here, Joe, moving forward?
Yeah, you absolutely have to take the Washington Capitals seriously. The way this team has been able to step up with or without Ovechkin on the ice as well. So this team is just finding a way to get things done. They're so strong in their zone, and their defense has been able to really lock down opponents. We've got the goaltending that we need there. And I do think the Washington Capitals, although we look at them last year and they kind of fizzled out. I don't think this team is going to fizzle out. I think they have everything that it takes to make a deep run. And looking at them versus the Florida Panthers is going to tell us a lot tomorrow in that matchup, because I'm looking for both of these teams to come out so strong in net, to come out so strong defensively. So which offense is going to be able to get past the other is going to be a huge eye-opener. But I think at the end of the day, you look at the Washington Capitals, they are at home, they're getting last change, and right now, pick 'em sort of price. You are getting the Capitals at minus 102. I won't be shocked if they do move into more of a favorite role as we get closer into the night, but this game is straight playoff style hockey for me tomorrow. I'm looking at the under 1.5 in the first period. No goal in the first 10 minutes, and the under 5.5 for the full game, Joe. I don't think these teams will trade back goals tomorrow. I think goals will be really hard to come by.
Your Calgary Flames, big win last night there against Seattle. Big one at home tomorrow night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. What do you think about this Flames team and their chances this year, Joe?
Well, I really love what we're seeing out of goaltending there with Dustin Wolf. Looking at Dustin Wolf at home, the young rookie, he is sitting at plus 1,100 to take the Calder. And I can't remember the last time you were getting that kind of value on a goaltender to get the Calder, because they're normally not up there. But seeing him in net at home, he's being completely lights out, and the crowd and the home fans are completely behind him. So that's really cool to see, Joe. One thing you don't see or hear on TV is they actually are howling for Dustin Wolf in Calgary when he makes those big saves, and his ability to move in that net. Even though he's a smaller goaltender, he's making some great stops. Now, Calgary right now, coming back from Seattle, they need to get every win they can on this homestand. They had a tough loss versus the Red Wings and then bounce back within 24 hours of taking on the Seattle Kraken, getting the win. But at home, they have to come up with every single win they can, Joe, because we know this team sitting below 500 on the road, if they can't be solid in their home stances, they have no hopes of making the playoffs.
No, they absolutely do not here. Is there a dark horse here, Joe, like a team we should not count out just yet that might make a run at this?
There's a couple. You look at the New York Rangers, and with the moves that they have made, getting JT Miller on there, they've got a long way to go, but I definitely don't think you can count out that team. The Minnesota Wild, I do think is another team that you really have to watch. They have the goaltending, and Gustafsson hasn't looked as strong over a couple of stretches here, but solid goaltending there. Kaprizov is out for I think about 3 weeks now. We do have the break coming up. He's got a lower body surgery. Not actually sure exactly what is happening there. But once he gets back out on the ice, and we have the playmakers that are making waves on that team, like Matt Boldy, I do have concerns around Ryan Hartman if he's going to get suspended for that play this weekend versus the Ottawa Senators, in which he put Tim Struzel's face right into the ice. So we'll have to see on that. But I do think we've got solid teams across the board, Joe. We all know the teams that aren't going to be making things, like the Montreal Canadiens, the Buffalo Sabres. But Ottawa definitely is one you want to watch. Ottawa right now in the Atlantic, they're plus 950 to take the Atlantic. They're not going to do it, but I do think this team makes the playoffs and they make a push.
I don't understand Minnesota, Joe. They can't win at home, and yet they're 26-3 on the road. They are the best road team in the entire NHL, and they're not even 500 at home. It's the strangest thing in the world there. But, Joe, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Big slate tomorrow in the NHL. Another hour of Game Time Decisions next here on the Grid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we got 6 days before the big game. One more NFL heavyweight title fight here between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. Great storylines up and down with this one. Anytime you can get a second crack at the apple against the same team that left you disappointed just a couple of years ago, the Eagles are in prime position to be able to exact a little bit of revenge. But can they? Because nobody else seems to have been able to take down good old Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And we will be live all week on location from Radio Row in New Orleans. So we'll have all the latest for you all week long leading up to the Sunday heavyweight fight. But in the meantime, we got plenty of other things going on and some other storylines that don't involve the Lakers and Luka Doncic, including Rory McIlroy. Wow, will you look at that? We found a tournament he can actually win because that's right, it's not a major. Brady Cannon in the house stepping in. And I got to tell you, Brady, you just kind of had a feeling watching him on Saturday, and then, Sunday comes around, guys are chipping in from all over the place on the Sunday round, and he is methodically just nailing putts, putting it within 10 feet, and that back nine, he played out of his mind, put it away, and nobody was catching him. That's vintage Rory. Are we going to get more of that? Is there reason to believe we can get more of that this year and he finally breaks the drought of majors?
I kind of hope so, Joe. I think it's great. I mean, Rory is so smart, and I think it's really cool to hear him talk about winning at what he called one of golf's cathedrals. I thought that was a great description, one of the iconic venues in the entire world, that being, of course, Pebble Beach. And Pebble Beach was kind of kicked under the rug for many years. It was certainly a star spot on the schedule when it was back. It was the Crosby and Bing Crosby, and you had a week before that you had Bob Hope, and that was really kind of Arnold Palmer's time and whatever. And then in kind of the last 15 years or so, you didn't have all these big names coming to play at Pebble. Well, now the last 2 years, they've turned it into a signature event. So Rory shows up and Scotty shows up. And you and I talked about Justin Rose. This guy, he's won, he won at Pebble just a few years ago, and he was right there in the mix again on Sunday. And so it was cool to see Rory and not only Rory, but also Pebble Beach, the golf course, kind of shine with all the stars and all the top players in the world. And to see this golf course really take on a great field and have a great week where the weather was kind of all over the place. One day it was nice, one day it was windy, one day it was raining, and a pretty cool golf tournament to see these guys tested in a lot of different ways and a lot of different conditions. And, the big question, Joe, is does this translate into Rory having a good year? I hope so. But the bigger question, does it translate into Rory winning the Masters? Gosh,
Yeah.
Is it ever going to happen? I mean, he's been close a couple of times. It just, you make an example of how he tore it up on the back nine. He launched a drive about 500 yards on the 14th hole, had like a 7-iron in and hit a 25-foot bomb for eagle. I think when Rory can dominate a golf course like that and overpower a course, I think that's where he really flourishes. And I don't think he can really do that at Augusta National. It takes so much creativity and such a sense of scrambling around the greens. I just don't know if it's – I think when Rory McIlroy's playing his best, he can win anywhere, anytime. But I really don't think Augusta National is the best fit for Rory McIlroy's game.
Well, and I think with Rory, it's always been mind over matter. It's never been a lack of talent. He can hit the ball with he's got all the tools. The problem with Rory is Rory above the shoulders. Sometime we saw it last year, right? At the US Open, where I think he even admitted it, that it just above the shoulders, he wasn't there. He got into his head, and then that was the end of it. And he actually quoted saying, he's taking a page out of Scotty Scheffler's book. And man, when Rory is saying, I want to be more like Scotty, who, great, by the way, I mean, just fantastic way to come out his first tournament of the year after the surgery and the accident with the hand and all of that good stuff. Played very well Saturday and Sunday. He is obviously the favorite heading into the Waste Management Open this week, and deservedly so, but you mentioned it. What is that number that he is a favorite here at this tournament?
I just started diving into this handicap a couple of hours ago, and the odds they don't populate here in Las Vegas until about 5 p.m. local time, which is about an hour from now. And sometimes it's even a little bit later than that. But getting ready to pop on here with you, I just popped up FanDuel. Plus 280, Scotty Scheffler. My goodness, we're not even getting plus 450 or 5-1 like we were last week. Now it's plus 280. That I guess, Rory's not in the field. We don't have quite the same star power that we did last week at Pebble, but Justin Thomas, Matsuyama, Soon JM, Sam Burns, Tom Kim. That's one of the beauties as bettors. When Scotty's in the field, all these other guys are like at 40-1. Sam Burns at 25-1, that's not too bad. Tom Kim at 35, that's not too bad. I bet Scotty Scheffler here last year, and with about 6 holes to go, he became the in-game favorite. I want to say at about minus 250, and then was not able to get it done. One of the few times all season that he was not able to shut the door. Sahith Theegala, Nick Taylor. Nick Taylor eventually got it done and took home the trophy here. But Scotty has finished 7th, 3rd, and won this event twice. So I understand why he's the favorite. And when I'm crunching all my stats here, he's tops on every list that I'm running here. So I get it, but I don't think I can go to the window with that price. If I was getting plus 450 or 5-1, I might land on him, but I don't think I can at less than 3-1 this week.
No, but good news is, again, I think he had one round in the 70. I think he shot 70 on Friday, but every other round sub 70. He went 69, 67 on Saturday and Sunday. So he looks in pretty good shape for a guy that we haven't seen out on the golf course in a minute and had to have hand surgery of all things there, Brady.
Yeah.
So, but I think we all agree with him. Is that flat stick working? It looked pretty good this past weekend. And if it is, I don't know anybody, tee to green, that if he's putting, maybe that's not high enough. Maybe that's not low enough at plus 2-1.
Well, it's funny. I won with him back in December, kind of a silly season event, the Hero World Challenge in the Bahamas. 20 guys are in the field. It's a Tiger Woods Invitational. And I'm like, Scotty Scheffler against 19 other guys? Yeah, I don't care what the price is. I played it at plus 225. And one odds maker out here in town said it should have been minus 225. And maybe plus 280 is a good price here. It's hard to get to the window with that. But yeah, I mean, he's won here twice. He's got 2 other top 10 finishes. We know he's the premier ball striker on the planet. And that's exactly what this tournament is ball striking. And this is a preferred surface. We go from Poana last week, which he probably doesn't like as much, to now Bermuda surface here, which he's more used to and familiar with. Absolutely. I don't know. Maybe we'll talk on Wednesday, Joe, and I'll be clearly on Scotty Scheffler to win this thing. Not yet.
Yeah,
though.
well, it's happening. I mean, we all know that's happening, Brady. All right, Brady, I want to get some of your football props. We'll talk about that next here on Game Time Decisions.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word. Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. We appreciate you stopping by as we're getting ready for the big game here on Sunday. Eagles versus the Chiefs. And, of course, Sports Grid on location in New Orleans at Radio Row all week. We'll be bringing you the latest information, some great interviews lined up all week long. We will truly have our finger on the pulse of what is happening in New Orleans for this big game. And Brady Cannon, it's certainly priced like it's going to be a good game. Doesn't always mean we're going to get a good game, but the market is pretty much telling us, it feels like another one-score game, just like 2 years ago. Only it feels a little bit different because I don't think the offenses are as good as they were 2 years ago, but I think the defenses are better than they were a couple of years ago. Where have you started to lean with this game come on Sunday?
Yeah, I think my initial lean is with the Eagles. I think that defense is going to cause problems for, like you say, an offense that I don't think is as good with Kansas City. They really don't have much of a running game at all. Now, I think that's going to force Mahomes into passing situations and scrambling situations, which obviously he can be very successful navigating. But I just think eventually, I believe it's 47 of the last 58 Super Bowls have been won by the better defense. And Philadelphia has the better defense. Now, Kansas City's defense is no slouch, but I think the X factor is Saquon, because Philadelphia obviously does have a running game, and they have a pretty darn good passing game as well, not only with Smith and A.J. Brown, but with Dallas Goedert as well. So, I mean, I think they have enough weapons through the air, and then, of course, they have the home run hitter in the backfield. And so I think they're very difficult to defend, where I think in the case of Kansas City, Philadelphia can make them more one-dimensional. And you can sit here and handicap this stuff all you want. And I think it was the similar situation 2 years ago against the Eagles. And I think it was similar last year against the 49ers, where we felt, and I think I feel again this year, that Philadelphia is the better team. I felt San Francisco last year is the better team. And I remember saying it to a mutual friend, Las Vegas Chris. I said, Chris, the better quarterback beat the better team. And, it just seems to happen every time we turn around. There he is, Superman putting on his cape, Harrison Butker kicking a field goal as time runs out, and the Chiefs win again by the skin of their teeth. I could see that happening. I think you're going to have very sharp people on both sides of the fence here. We spoke with them, Adam and I over the weekend, Adam Kaufman and I on our weekend show. We did both Saturday and Sunday. We spoke with Bill Krackomberger. He likes the Chiefs. We spoke with Paul Bovey. He likes the Eagles. We spoke with Rob Pizzola. He likes the Chiefs. And we spoke with one other gentleman. I'm missing who it was exactly, but it was dead split, 2-2, Eagles and Chiefs. So I don't really think there is a definitive side that I like in this game. And Adam and I were saying, I may just end up walking into this game without a play on the side. I'll have a pocket full of prop bets for sure, but I may end up just betting this thing in game. And that sounds like a cop-out answer, but like you say, Joe, the odds makers are telling us that they expect this to be close. And I think it was kind of similar to what we saw with the Bills and the Chiefs a couple weeks ago. If I can in game where I'm getting plus 3.5 on the Chiefs at some point and also plus 3.5 on the Eagles at some point, bang, I'm going to hit submit and watch the rest of the game comfortably. I think I can fall within that window.
Yeah, it is. And I think the prop market is fascinating too, depending on how you think this game is going to play out. And, I don't necessarily believe that Kansas City has to sell out to stop Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon can get his yards. They just can't let him break a 70-yard touchdown. Like he can't be that kind of difference maker. If he wants to, get 3-4 yards, 5 yards, I think they're more than happy to do that, but they're not going to let him take it to the house, and you can't let him beat you with those kinds of big plays. The question is, are we fading him because we know the public is going to want everything over with Saquon? Is it smart to look the other way with him?
That's a great question. And we were talking quite a bit about that over the weekend. And I mentioned Bill Krakenberger, professional sports bettor. He has already unloaded on the under 25.5 yards will be the longest rush for Saquon Barkley. And that's risky business because he's done it more than a handful of times already this season. But his point was, if this was anybody else other than what this guy is doing this year, that number would be 19.5 or 18.5 or 17.5. The fact that it's 25.5 yards is a really big chunk run. And to your point, you got to believe the Chiefs, they don't mind the 3, 4, 5 yard carries. They don't want the 25, 30, 40 yard carry. So there's a guy that, makes a lot of money in this industry, and I respect his opinion taking the under. I thought this one was very interesting too, Joe. We know that has to be a main focus of the Kansas City defense. How about Saquon Barkley's very first rushing attempt? Under or over 3.5 yards? The over is minus 130. The under is plus 110. What do you do with that one? If they're so locked in on this guy, is he going to gain 4 yards on that first carry?
Well, I keep going back to that number, too, which is obnoxious, right? The fact that Spagnuolo's defenses have gone 18 straight games without giving up a 100-yard rush. 18.
Amazing.
And they have faced some quality, running backs in that spot. So, if I'm Sirianni, obviously, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I'm wondering if he gets used more in the passing game with Kellen Moore than that, because I think it's one of the more underrated aspects of his game is his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield.
Maybe that's a great prop bet to lean on. His longest reception will be such and such yards or number of receptions.
Yes, because I think, listen, it's no secret. Put the ball in the hands of your best players. I think Xavier Worthy, well, that's why he'll probably get rushes. And the fastest guy in the thing, put it in Saquon's hand and figure out ways for him to get involved. Brady, always a pleasure. Looking forward to hearing who you have this week in the Waste Management. We'll have more as Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game Time Decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage Late
sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
That was Aaron Rodgers' thing. To your quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
It's a luxury pick. We don't have the luxury. We're trying to win right now. I'm in a window right now, and you're going to say, no, we're going to plan this for the future. With a guy who had 4 years, 4 seasons ended by injury. 4. Like, Michael Penix is a walking injury. Like, what are you doing taking him in the top 10?
The Bostonian versus the Book.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here as we continue to get ready for the big game on Sunday. We welcome back in our good friend here, Brady Cannon, because we were just talking props here for the big game, Brady. And, I'm not sure. I love when you get the ball in the hands of your best players. Don't overthink it. Andy Reid doesn't do that. We saw it with Tyreek Hill. We've seen him get creative to put the ball in the hands of guys like Xavier Worthy. Now, Hollywood Brown, maybe. And I think Philadelphia is going to do the same thing. And if it's not necessarily rushing, it's not like Saquon Barkley can't catch the ball. I think his receiving yards is probably not being looked at enough as a possibility for this game. What are some of the other props you're looking at for us here?
Well, yeah, in the last segment, you mentioned Xavier Worthy, and I saw a proposition bet with him that I think is thought-provoking. The number's really interesting. And a good prop, a good number is when you can kind of make a case for both sides, right? Longest reception by Xavier Worthy, 20 and a half yards, minus 110 either way, over or under. 20 and a half yards, longest reception. So that could even be kind of a jet sweep thing where they pitch it to him and he, turns the corner and goes for 20 plus yards. I mean, You talked about how dynamic he is. Get the ball in the hands of your best players. I think it's easy to think about going over with that one, but 20 and a half yards, that's a good chunk. I mean, again, like I say, I think you could make a case for either side there.
Yep, I agree. And I'll tell you the other thing, too, is he seems to be a forgotten piece here, but is DeAndre Hopkins not worth taking a flyer on? He's got, what's his reception prop? 1.5? I mean, his yard prop is next to nothing. He seems to have been a forgotten guy. This is a guy that, push comes to shove. If you're not paying attention to him, he could very well have a big part in what goes on here.
Well, how about this? This is at the Westgate Superbook here in Las Vegas. Will DeAndre Hopkins score a touchdown? The yes is plus 650. The no is minus 1,000. But I agree with you. They got to mix it up a little bit. We haven't seen this guy in a month of Sundays. It could be the time to, put a couple bucks on the plus 650 because you have to change. You have to change it up. Here's one for you, Joe. We love the cross sport parlays. And I think this is a really good one that again, will make you think. It'll make you handicap because the number should come out pretty darn close. So which is going to be higher? The total points scored in the football game. Okay. The total in the football game, or Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is hosting the Philadelphia 76ers that afternoon, total points, rebounds, and assists. And the number that the last couple of times that Giannis has faced the 76ers, I think he had a 55 and a 46 points, rebounds, and assists. So he's right in that window where this football game total is. And Adam Kaufman and I were talking about this one over the weekend. We say if Joel Embiid doesn't play, I take Giannis as getting the higher number. Unless you think the football game's going to sail over the total. I mean, that's a good one. That one's going to be close.
Yep, that's a very good one. Plus, Milwaukee's in the midst of a losing streak right now. They're probably going to get boat raced again here tonight by Oklahoma City. So, they need to rack up some wins, and I would expect a big effort, Brady, on that one from Milwaukee and Giannis, who's actually sitting out tonight against OKC. So I love that one. And I'm wondering, is there any sort of cross-sport parlay involving the waste management we can probably look at here too?
Yeah, there absolutely is. It'll be like, what score does Justin Thomas shoot or something like that, minus 5.5, versus the total in the game. How many birdies this guy makes, versus how many let's say, how many birdies does Thomas make versus how many catches Travis Kelce makes? Yeah, they will definitely involve the waste management. And it's right here in front of me in this manifesto. Look at this booklet from the Westgate. This is 50 pages. This is 50 pages. It's double-sided. It's literally 100 pages worth of information. And it's like reading War and Peace to try and find a couple of $10 bets you want to make.
and I love it. I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic, and I'm all for it. We'll have it all week for you here, too, as well. So, going to be fun, Brady. I am looking forward to this game. I'm looking forward to a lot of the events we got coming up, including the Waste Management Open, in which we'll talk more about this week. Enjoy it, Brady. We'll see you again as Game Time Decisions continues here on the grid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early
The
line.
magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game Time Decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
That was Aaron Rodgers' thing. To your quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
It's a luxury pick. We don't have the luxury. We're trying to win right now. I'm in a window right now, and you're going to say, no, we're going to plan this for the future. With a guy who had 4 years, 4 seasons ended by injury. 4. Like, Michael Penix is a walking injury. Like, what are you doing taking him in the top 10?
The Bostonian versus the Book.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships. So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on Sports.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the Sports Grid Network. Excited. It is a great week coming up here. Plenty of events, plenty of sports happening as we await the ultimate final NFL game of the season, which will crown a champion between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. But before we get to Sunday, boy, we got a lot of other stuff going on the hardwood, on the ice, and let's check in with our good friend Joe Madden and Tom Vecchio, who without a doubt have a Sports Millions pick'em for us here. What do you got tonight?
Happy Monday, everyone. Joe and Tom here. It's time to jump into our Sports Millions pick'ems. Now, we've had a crazy weekend in basketball, Tom. So I think we should turn to the hardwood today and look at these Sports Millions. Of course, Luka being traded, that's the buzz around the league. What are you thinking?
Yeah, we have so much going on across the NBA. Trades over the weekend, the trade deadline coming up later this week, the Super Bowl coming up later this weekend. We'll certainly get into that, but we're starting off with basketball today. And I want to turn to Cade Cunningham, higher than 27.5 points. It's a great matchup going up against Atlanta, super high total, obviously. I've spoken about Cade Cunningham before in terms of the shot volume, his first all-star nod. He continues to pile up the points. And I love this matchup for him going up against Atlanta, a team I do not fear on defense. So I think he continues things to close out this stretch of the NBA strongly, and he'll push towards 30 points tonight. Very, very easy for him. What do you got?
I think that's a great way to go. And I'm going to look at the matchup tonight between the Orlando Magic and the Golden State Warriors. And I'm circling Steph Curry here for the Golden State Warriors. I really do think he needs to turn it up another notch if they're hoping to do anything here in the Western Conference. So I'm looking for Steph Curry to start turning it on and turning it on here tonight. Now, over on Sports Millions, we are getting a point number of 26.5, and I will take that to the higher. I'm looking for him to come out strong versus a Orlando Magic team that in his career has had success. Actually, that higher number is only 23.5, Tom. This is where I'm going. He has to go higher than this because we look at him versus the Orlando Magic, and that number is 26.5 that he's averaging over 22 games. I was expecting to be looking at a 25-26 number out here, so really glad to see we're only at 23.5. Definitely to the higher is where I want to go with this one. I know the Magic can be strong on defense, but this team has been struggling, losing their last 3. Steph is stronger at home, and I do think with Draymond Green probable to get out there on the court, he'll be feeding him, and Steph can go higher than 23.5 points tonight.
So we start off with some basketball today. We'll hit some NHL tomorrow, more basketball, football to close out the week. Should be a good one.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a great week out here. So you guys make sure you join us for some more Sports Millions Pick'ems.
Thanks so much, Joe. And yes, let's not forget, though, we also have the NBA Blitz'em for you as well at Sports Millions.
Enjoy Sports Millions Pick'ems, but hate making the picks yourself? Well, Sports Millions has you covered. Head on over and play Sports Millions Blitz'em right now and let the computer do the work. Go to sportsmillions.com/Blitz'em to be able to win big prizes without having to make a single pick yourself. That's sportsmillions.com/Blitz'em.
All right, great stuff there. Looking forward to it all week long here. A little something for everybody as we await and trek, of course, to Sunday, where it'll be all about crowning a champion in the final NFL game of the year as the Eagles looking to exact a little revenge on the Kansas City Chiefs, who got them, well, just a few short years ago. But I got some bad news for Eagle fans, and they're not going to want to hear this. But if I was going to look towards the Philadelphia Eagles winning this game, I would probably want to figure out whether or not Taylor Swift is going to be attending this game. And I'll tell you why. She has single-handedly been one of the best things that has happened to the Chiefs so far this year. Why? Well, the Chiefs have played 19 games this year, including the playoffs. Taylor Swift has attended 9 of those Chief games. You know how many games they've lost? 0. 9-0 with her in attendance, whether it be home, whether it be away. My goodness, that is the ultimate lucky charm right there with Taylor Swift in attendance. Now, I remember last year, there were some questions. I know she had a concert, I believe, overseas. Was it Japan? Was she going to be able to make it back in time for the game? And we were flight tracking her, I think. But eventually she ended up making it to the game. And wouldn't you know it, well, there you go. She ended up getting it. She was there for the win last year as well. So really good lucky charm. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, Chiefs. So I would make sure that she somehow shows up at this game so you can keep that streak rolling. 9-0 when Taylor Swift shows up at the games for the Chiefs. Will they make it a perfect 10-0? We're going to have to find out. Should be a good time here. And by the way, we've got much more coming up on the game all week long as we've got boots on the ground in New Orleans. We're going to have interviews starting every day. And don't forget, Sports Millions. Now, I'm wondering if they have Taylor Swift on Sports Millions. One would have to find out there and take a look there. But I would not bet against it. I'm a big believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it'll be interesting if she's there. We're going to have a lot of conversations about that all week long, in fact, on the ground in New Orleans. Interviews all week with, I know, Scotty Farrell and of course, Gabe Morency and the crew. They will, without a doubt, be nosing around trying to figure out as much of the inside info as possible for you guys. And beginning tomorrow morning on the early line, Ben Stevens and myself will be able to get you updated with live interviews, of course, directly from New Orleans. So as we get the info, you get the info, and that is what it's all about. Knowledge is power. It's also a pretty good way to make it a profitable week of the big game. Not to mention, don't forget, big UFC card coming up on Saturday in Australia. A couple of championship fights there. The Waste Management Open on the PGA Tour, one of the more party venues on the PGA Tour. It's always a good time there in Arizona. That's going on this week. And before you know it, and I'm already starting to see it, don't forget, pitchers and catchers are reporting. That is correct. It will be Major League Baseball season before you know it. And in fact, there were still a couple of interesting things going on as far as that goes. And boy, I tell you, Alex Bregman's still not on a team yet, but it does look like the Detroit Tigers are looking in order to be able to make him a part of their lineup here. Not to mention they reunited, of course, with their former starter, Jack Flaherty. Now he looks like he is back there. But Bregman, my goodness, I mean, he was a guy that we all anticipated would have been one of the first couple of guys off the board, still available. He's also been one of the most productive third basemen in sports now for over a decade. We'll see if the Tigers can make a push this year and see if they can get it done. But we'll have much more on that because we're all looking forward to seeing Juan Soto in a Mets uniform. Are we not? No, we're not. All right, Game Time Decisions continues with a look at the NBA slate tonight here on the Grid.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game Time Decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
late
sort of
night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
That was Aaron Rodgers' thing. Took a quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
It's a luxury pick. We don't have the luxury. We're trying to win right now. I'm in a window right now, and you're going to say, no, we're going to plan this for the future. With a guy who had 4 years, 4 seasons ended by injury. 4. Like, Michael Penix is a walking injury. Like, what are you doing taking him in the top 10?
The Bostonian versus the Book.
And now you have to qualify, and these majors, you got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness, and I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in. Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri. Appreciate you stopping by as we're getting ready, of course, for a big slate of games in the association tonight here. In fact, Atlanta and Detroit currently underway right now. That game knotted up at 44 apiece with about 9 minutes to go in the second quarter there. How about Washington on top of Charlotte? Charlotte was laying 5 points in that. Who is Charlotte to be laying points against anybody? But Washington taking it to Charlotte right now. And one of the games of the night, of course, was the Houston Rockets taking on the New York Knicks. That game just underway at Madison Square Garden, tied up at 6 apiece. The big game still to come in college basketball tonight centers around the Big 12 with two teams that are just going in the wrong direction as Kansas at Fog Allen taking on Iowa State. Kansas coming off of the single biggest choke job in the history of the program. And we're talking about KU basketball. It goes back, 100 years, and they have never blown a 21-point lead ever in program history, but they did just that against the Baylor Bears on Saturday in Baylor, not to mention two of the starters for Baylor were actually not available in that game, and they still ended up getting torched in the second half. They'll look to bounce back. Also, another interesting fact, Kansas has never lost 3 games at Fog Allen in a season since the 2000 season. I mean, we're going way back here now, some 25 years ago. That is when the last time we've seen KU be that dysfunctional at Fog Allen. They've already lost 2 games at home this year. Will tonight be the third? The problem of the matter is they're taking on, or in good news for Kansas, is they're taking on an Iowa State team that, they've got their own issues. They are coming off of back-to-back losses, maybe the single worst loss of any supposed top 5 team that we've seen. How at home you lose to a dysfunctional Kansas State team and not just lose, but get beat up and bullied and shot out of your own gym, kind of head scratching. But that's exactly what we just saw there on Saturday with Iowa State. So back-to-back losses for them. And now we've got Kansas who's trying to stop the bleeding and salvage the season. 2.5, we've seen nothing but money coming in on Kansas so far, but it does look like the buyback has begun. I think the best way to approach this game is, give me the under. Because when you have 2 desperate teams like this, the one thing you can always count on is defense. Why? Because defense is all about effort. And I think you're going to get a big effort out of both of these teams here tonight. This could very well be a rock fight instead of some sort of high-scoring, shoot them out of the gym. Both of these teams have struggled offensively lately. Wouldn't shock me at all if we get a under tonight at Fog Allen. So that is a game we're going to keep an eye on. That's the big marquee matchup of the night. The only other game of interest, of course, was in the ACC. And if you want to summarize what the ACC basketball looks like this year, look no further than Virginia on the road as a 13-point dog taking on Pittsburgh. Yeah, they're winning 34-19 and just about to close out the first half. They are blowing the doors off of Pittsburgh, who again was a 13-point favorite because they were supposed to be that next level in the ACC. One of the worst conferences that we have seen in a long time in the ACC this year. When you look at Miami, who, somehow managed to win a game this past weekend, which is hilarious. But when you look at Miami, when you look at Virginia, when you look at Syracuse, North Carolina has 10 losses this year so far. The ACC has turned into one of the worst college basketball conferences we have seen. I can't remember the last time the ACC has been this dysfunctional and this bad, even with the Blue Bloods. If it wasn't for Duke and, dare I say, Clemson Those are the two teams really carrying the conference right now. Pittsburgh was in that middle tier, which is why so much money came in on them today, because they're a bubble team. Virginia, once their coach, Tony Bennett, walked away on the season, that was pretty much told you everything you needed to know about the talent level and what you were going to expect from Virginia. But nobody saw North Carolina being this bad here. Nobody saw Miami being this bad this year. It's just, you've got two teams in the ACC, and that's it. And the team that was supposed to maybe take that next step is Pitt, and they were laying 12.5 to lowly Virginia, and they're getting the doors blown off of them right now as they come to the end of the first half. College basketball, boy, oh boy, it has been a fun ride this year. Everything that is up is down. What's left is what is right. So I am absolutely looking forward to seeing what else this night has to bring for us. And I can tell you this. I can also tell you this here, and I know because I'm going to get yelled at by Syracuse fans, but trust me, Syracuse fans, Jim Boeheim ain't walking through that door anytime soon, and neither is the quality of basketball that we have grown accustomed from there. I don't know what to make of the ACC. I think it's Duke or bust, although I do think Clemson is poised to make another run in March Madness. They're worth keeping an eye on. But outside of that, I don't see any team coming from the clouds this year. Sorry, don't see it happening here. It is a disgusting effort by the teams in the ACC, who many people thought was still going to be one of the best college basketball conferences this year. And you're getting anything but quality basketball from the ACC. The SEC, different story. The Big 12, oh boy, Houston making its mark, except they finally lost a game at home after 33 straight wins. We'll have more on college basketball and an update in the NBA when Game Time Decisions continues on the grid.
Solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Is it just a matter of his contract, his age? I mean, usually things like this get fixed pretty quickly, but this one is not fixed, and now it's just super uncomfortable.
The opportunity or the idea of getting another team involved adds more complication to the situation, and it doesn't seem like a resolution is anywhere in sight, but the more suspensions come in, the more it's clear that the saga is over, or his time there is over.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Time Decisions here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Raineri as we look to close out this edition together, and we are getting excited here. Obviously, a huge week from New Orleans leading up to the big game on Sunday, and we will have you covered all week long as we will have live up-to-the-minute information from Radio Row in New Orleans as we get ready for the Chiefs and the Eagles. So many great storylines to look forward to here. We're looking at essentially a pick'em game, pretty high total. So all in all, this should be a great week. And of course, history is on the line this Sunday with the Kansas City Chiefs. Can they become the first team in, the Super Bowl era to win back-to-back Super Bowls? It's never been done. And we've had some of those, think back to some of those great, 49er and Cowboy teams, with the opportunities to just rattle off a whole bunch. But that third one is so hard to get. And yet here they are. The Kansas City Chiefs looking to do something that has never been done before with a 29-year-old Patrick Mahomes, whose trajectory could be, if you thought you had the GOAT over the last 2 decades watching Tom Brady, the trajectory here of Patrick Mahomes at this point is through the ceiling. Can they keep it going? Can Patrick Mahomes do something that has never been done in the history of the sport before? And quite honestly, given the opportunity in a 3-year period to be able to avenge a loss in this game from a couple of years ago, it's only happened one other time in the history of the NFL. And you'd have to go back to the 90s. I believe it was the Dallas Cowboys and, shocker, the Buffalo Bills were the last 2 teams to have met twice within a 3-year span. And of course, we all know, Buffalo certainly didn't get the better of the Cowboys. The second go around, will that change for the Eagles? Will the Eagles be able to get it done and avenge that loss? And you have to realize too that the Eagles have been very relevant now going on a while. Don't forget, they ended up winning that trophy back in 2017. And who did they beat? They beat the GOAT. They beat Tom Brady and the Patriots there with Nick Foles. And they had an opportunity a couple of years ago to get another one. And here they are for a third time in 7 years, 8 years to be in the big dance. This is, say what you want about the Philadelphia Eagles, but they have certainly steadied this franchise and steadied this ship under Howie Roseman. And they keep getting better and better. And for all of the noise surrounding Jalen Hurts, listen, he had to switch colleges, if you recall, because he wasn't good enough to keep the job at Alabama. So where does he go? He goes to OU. What does he do? Well, he just wins games, right? And that's all he does. And he has done it well here for Philadelphia. And now Jalen Hurts in a second crack at the championship in 3 years. That's pretty darn impressive here. But this team looks a lot different than they did a couple of years ago. Jalen Hurts had a huge game against that Kansas City defense a couple of years ago. But this is more about the running back, is it not? Saquon Barkley. And how many Giant fans are watching this going, come on, Saquon? How many Giant fans do you think are rooting for Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles on this Sunday? I would venture that is an impossible position to be in, right? Do I want to root for Patrick Mahomes again, or do I want the running back that was supposed to be the cornerstone of my franchise until, of course, they decided that he wasn't good enough to play alongside Danny Dimes? And we sent them to our arch rival, our nemesis, the Philadelphia Eagles, who he has basically taken now with a shot at a world championship. My goodness, Giant fans, don't envy you. Me, I'm a Jet fan, so I've already given up on next season, and we haven't even made it to the draft yet. And that is how much I have to look forward to as a New York Jet fan. But the sky could be the limit for the Philadelphia Eagles, and history is on the line with Patrick Mahomes, and we've got you covered all week long here live from Radio Row in New Orleans. We'll have much more all week here on Game Time Decisions. But enjoy the night, enjoy the games. We'll see you again tomorrow on the grid.